So some of you may have heard about this new book that came out not that long ago called Fully Automated Luxury Communism. And the idea in this book is essentially, as the title implies, that by seizing the means of production and socializing, the wealth of the ruling class and redistributing everything, that everyone can live a luxurious life, and that using automation and robotics, we can create a world where people can stop working and can just relax and enjoy living in a communist utopia. And, I'm all for imagining communist utopias, but I want to push back against this one because I think it's total bullshit. And, the reality is that sort of vision does not account for where the raw materials that we think of as constituting luxury come from. So, when I think about what luxury means in this culture, I think of, posh furniture and big screen TVs and, champagne and, Teslas and fancy cars and big mansions and all these sorts of things. That's what most people understand that sort of term to mean. And when you think about where those raw materials actually come from, these are standards of luxury that have been created by colonialism. They're standards of luxury that have only been possible in colonial nations that have been brutally exploiting and extracting from the poor and the planet. And to think that we can somehow extend this to everyone simply by socializing the control of the resources, one, is simply not true, and two, even if it were true, it would be completely irresponsible and destructive. Just because you have a socialized economy doesn't necessarily mean that it's not an extractive, destructive economy, even if it's completely under worker control. So, I think that this is a pretty destructive and harmful tendency, and it's something that is unfortunately pretty common from what I've seen among the communist community. I think there are a lot of communists who would push back against this bullshit and kind of recognize it as being bullshit. People who would subscribe to a more eco-socialist mindset or a degrowth mindset, and who recognize that, let's seize the wealth of the rich, let's redistribute, let's do all these things, and all of that wealth is built on slavery, sweatshop labor, strip mining, massive amounts of logging, oil extraction, poisoning of the planet, giant factories spewing pollution, global supply chains that are some of the most destructive and polluting industries on the planet in terms of shipping and rail and highways and so on. And these things can't continue. If we want to have a livable future, these things cannot continue. We cannot allow them to continue. And it doesn't fucking matter whether they're going to be powered by, diesel and bunker fuel as they are now, or whether it's going to be batteries, because those batteries are extremely destructive in and of themselves. So, people can talk about this, but the reality is it's a completely flawed vision. It does not account for the ecological underpinnings of quote-unquote luxury as it's conceived in this society, and we need to be thinking about things very differently. The reality is, there's the idea in social ecology of the absolute minimum, I think is the term, talking about what do humans need to be healthy, to be happy, to be fulfilled, and of course it's things like clean water, good food, community, some sort of housing, some sort of healthcare, these basic requirements of life. And those sorts of things can be done in an ecological way, in a way that does not destroy the planet, but it's not going to look like what we call luxury at all. But that's okay. We don't want luxury. We don't need luxury. We need a livable planet. We need a survivable world. And I think that, if we can get to a future where we see that by dismantling these destructive systems, if we can get to that sort of ecological future, then we're going to be living in a world of luxury at that point. There's a possibility of living in a world of luxury, and there's a possibility of survival for future generations, which in a lot of ways is more important when you consider it than luxury for us. So keep your eye out for this bullshit. I don't think many people who are following my work are going to fall for that type of thing, but it's a reality, and a lot of people think it's a achievable thing, which to me is a strange mindset to have. I guess it kind of extends into the whole productivist impulse that underlies some aspects of Marxism, some traditions of thought within Marxism about how, capitalism has really advanced the productive forces of compared to feudalism, and that's true, and we need to recognize that those productive forces are fundamentally destructive. They're extractive, and so we should not recognize this as an advance or as progress in any way. We should recognize this as being suicidal and homicidal and ecocidal, and we need to reject that philosophy, reject that productivist impulse, and instead, build an ecological philosophical framework that understands that we can only take as much as the land is willing to give freely, and that has been enough for tens of thousands of cultures throughout human history to survive and thrive and be happy and healthy people. And if we are not willing to accept that, if we're not willing to accept those natural limits, then we're going to destroy everything. And that's what we've seen happening. And of course, this is not necessarily driven by decisions that you and I are making as individuals. We were born into the system. We don't necessarily have control over it, but we do have a responsibility to stop it once we understand what's going on.